recorded.
So, ladies, I just thought about something that I wanted to share really quickly. I have to understand that what I stumbled upon is so convoluted and is so complex that a lot of things are going to keep coming up about it. Okay. So about
Talking
this.
about one of the very interesting topic called X chromosome inactivation or X inactivation, which is also called lionization, after the scientist Mary Lyon, who discovered it in 1962. So what is this X inactivation? Now, as we know, in females we have two X chromosomes, right? XX. So we are talking about the sex chromosome. Female has XX chromosome and male has XY chromosome. That means for females, whatever genes are present on X chromosomes, female have two alleles of each gene, right? Because there are two chromosomes, so each gene has two alleles. But in male, there's only one X chromosome, so that means there's only one allele for each gene present on X chromosome. So that means there is inequality in terms of genes that are present on X chromosome for male and female. So to balance this out, for dosage compensation, that's what we call it as, to have a balance in expression in terms of genes that are present and for expression in both male and female, there's something called X inactivation occurs in case of female. That means one of the X chromosome would be inactivated. All right.
Okay. So again, if you don't understand what that means, it means that even though you have two X's, right? Okay, actually, let's start from the beginning. The beginning is that the X is the human essence. The X is the human blueprint, right? It is the life and also the human blueprint, right? It is the one that has the blueprint of what a human is supposed to look like, right? It is the one that directs all the other genes to say, hey, this is how you're supposed to make this, and this is how your hair, the hair is going to be, let's say, blonde, right? The hair is going to be blonde, but here's how fine it's supposed to be. Here is how this it's supposed to be. Here is how that is supposed to be. Here's how long. Here is, how the pores are supposed to be, etc. Right? That is what dictates that. Hmm? That is the human blueprint. So that is why, which means that if you have two X's and the males have one, you are twice the human. And you have to understand this. The males, why that matters to them is because their Y chromosome, right? The genes on it is not an organism, which means if you have one X chromosome, that already makes you an organism, yeah? And he only has one. That means you are twice the organism that he is. And that matters because that organism that is twice the organism that he is can heal better, will live longer, which means that the male cannot overcome that female. Do you understand? This is why this is important. This is why this is important. That's what they're actually doing, right? Along with hobbling us reproductively, that is what I believe they are also doing. Because when you are twice twice as good, the organism, right? The threats, whatever threats they may pose to us, right, will be healed by that X. It would be healed by the X because one thing that I've spoken about in the other videos of this very same topic is that the X has an ability to self-heal mutations. You have heard of genetic mutations. The X has the ability to do this, to heal the mutations. Now, if you have two X's that are actively fixing mutations, do you think that you would have twice, at least twice, the better chance of reducing mutations? Yes, that is a resounding yes. Now, do you think that it is also possible that the two exes would communicate with each other to magnetize their abilities to heal? Yes. Yes, that is a possibility. I'm not saying that it is for sure. I'm saying that it is a possibility, right? And that possibility, that ability could potentially what? Have our lifespan at 900 plus years, right? So if you are attacking something that has the potential to live like to live what amounts to us eternity, right? To if you're attacking what would amount to us right now, immortality, how effective would that be? It would not be very effective, would it? It would not be very effective, would it? This is what they are actually doing. That no, excuse me. That that and also the reproductive thing is what they're actually doing. That is what they are actually doing. Okay? And something else occurred to me. I wanted you to see. I want you to see in another view, the reproductive thing. I want you to see it from another angle. From another angle. Like just one of the many angles that made me realize I had walked in on something. That I had landed squarely, unbeknownst, unsought, onto something divine. I want you to see this. I mean, just give me a minute because this has me so hot. This has me so hot. It has me so hot, right? So I made a big to small. A big to small what you might call it? You might call it a visual representation of what is actually happening. Okay? We're gonna have to redo this because it is just kind of wordy, right? It is wordy. So let's do it again somewhere. Let's just we're going to redo this really quickly. Not redo it, but edit it just a little bit. Just edit it just a little bit. Okay? Right. Just a little bit so that you can get the visual benefit that this is supposed to provide. The visual benefit. And the visual benefit is for you to realize the level of reproductive ability, the increasing level of reproducibility based on the amount of X. Oh my goodness. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. It is driving me nuts. Right? Based on the amount of X that you have. Right? So an XO female is the one that we recently talked about, which is the Turner syndrome female. The Turner syndrome female, those females are barren. This is how I knew something was going on. When the Turner syndrome females are barren, these are females that are supposedly, right? Females are, supposedly you need only one X, right? Only one X makes you, makes you still human and makes you still human and something isn't wrong with you. Something isn't wrong with you when you have just one X, right? Supposedly, except that these Turner syndrome females, right? They have a shorter lifespan, they are not as good looking. They are they struggle more with their weight. They have thin hair. They they have like this neck thing that you see a lot of men have, right? They have, and they are barren. This Turner syndrome females are barren, and they are short. These Turner syndrome females are usually short, right? They are usually short. Now, I need you to understand what is happening here, right? This reproductive graph, right? Based on how much X you have, right? This is the parthenogenic female right here. This is the normal female that we are currently, where you have the X, but the second you have two X's, but the second X is like a shadow because it is under lockdown. It is under lockdown, unable to be used for life, for your biological processes. It is under lockdown. It is imprisoned. This is what this is where we are right now. This is where we are. This is us here. And we can have children, but we need help, right? We can have children, but we need help. But first, let's go to the males. The males cannot have children, exactly like the females. The males cannot have children. They only had a workaround because the ex provided them a workaround. Ooh, goodness gracious. The ex provided them a workaround because it was already another species entirely. That is why we have what we have today in the reproductive space. That is why sexual reproduction looks like it is today. That is why sexual reproduction looks like it looks. This happened by accident. This happened by accident. The males didn't mean to parasite us, right? It's just actually no. They meant to do it, but what they meant to create was not another one of humans, of a human-looking organism. They meant to use us to create more of themselves. But something happened, and then they created something that looks more like us. That is what happened. But it was able to evolve. It was able to continue to evolve because it is highly mutative. Because it is highly mutative. And that is how, after several evolutions, right, it was able to create this thing that we see today. And during that, the reason it didn't continue because its takeover of us was not complete. Let me repeat that. Its takeover of us was not complete. Because why? Why wasn't it complete? Because the X stopped communicating with the Y. Ooh, the X with its real partner, another X, they have this behavior of communicating with each other. Oh my goodness. Yes, I actually read a paper on it. I would like to remember where because I usually save the papers, but I can't remember where I saved it. The X usually communicate with each other. The chromosomes. I actually think it's the chromosomes and not just the X, right? It's all the chromosomes that communicate with each other. They usually communicate with each other to help each other, like fix stuff, right? Except that when the X was communicating with the Y was destroying it because the Y has its own agenda, right? And it was highly mutated. And part of its agenda actually is what is what the mutation is helping it to achieve. So it's not actually mutative by mistake. It is mutative because that gives it an advantage over other organisms, right? That is how it gets its nonsense done, right? So So that is why the X stopped communicating with the Y, and that is why its takeover of us was not complete. That is why these males walk around here sour, because they were not able to attach to us instantly. They're not able to attach to us on sight because the X stopped sharing information. The X stopped sharing information. That is why the human that you see in front of you is, still has some kind of independence. That is why you still talk about wanting to be independent. And that's why they despise that. And that is why they keep telling you that you are not supposed to be independent. You are supposed to be subject to them. Right? So their why gave them a workaround. That is why it looks like they can reproduce. They are not reproducing. Let me repeat that. Males are not reproducing. Reproducing, which means would be to duplicate yourself from yourself. Duplicate yourself from yourself. That is duplication. Males are not doing that. That is duplication, and they are unable to do that. They do not duplicate. Okay? So then comes us. We are duplicating ourselves from ourselves, but we needed help. We need help to do it. But that is only because our X is on lockdown. It only appears as though we have two X's. We actually also have one. We are operating as though we have one X. This is why we cannot move forward with parthenogenesis. This is why reproduction is not a daily thing. It's not supposed to be a daily thing. This is why it's not a self-controlled thing. Because if you understand it, if you understand how reproduction works, right, based on what I studied, which of course you would not, because most of the things that we focus on as what reproduction represents is animals, right? Which is animals, well, us humans as the primary example, but then also animals as our backup, our secondary, right? But the problem is that these animals also have the same problem that we do. They have the same problem that we do. So we're basically trying to use a hobbled sample as evidence of how reproduction was supposed to work. And I only found this because I looked to plants. I only discovered how it was supposed to work because I looked to plants. I looked to plants and I realized that something was not quite right with the way we were reproducing, right? And that was what caused me to start looking at how all this what are the things that are controlling how the X works, how embryogenesis happens, how the egg is released, how the sperm is done, how how the meiosis happens, etc. Right? And that is when I discovered this. That is when I discovered this, that reproduction is simply supposed to be you reproduce, that you literally from yourself make another one. And that is supposed to be as automatic as your lungs happen. Do you understand that? Do you understand that the way your lungs work is the blueprint for the way for every part of your muscles, every part of your being works, right? Because what are your lungs doing? Your lungs are breathing, they are breathing for you automatically. They are working automatically. The way your heart pounds on its own, the way it beats on its own. That is how reproduction was set up. That is how every single cell was supposed to work, which means how would your reproduction work? A normal reproduction would be, on a nasty Tuesday, something I don't know yet, right? I don't know what triggers it yet. An egg is released from you. An egg is released, and the egg is released. It goes what? It goes to implant in your uterus. This is why an egg, like what happens actually is an egg is released. And in that process of egg release, and there is a whole process, a whole very, very, very complicated process that causes the egg to be released, right? And part of that process is that the the egg is going to be is going to go through mitosis, meiosis. Oh, actually, not mitosis, but meiosis. It's going to go through meiosis, right? And that meiosis is supposed to rearrange the genes. It's supposed to rearrange the genes so that it can vary the how do I call it? The genes. Now here's the thing. Here's why you even need the genes to be varied, right? Because they tell you that it is because to inoculate you against other organisms, infectious organisms. But that's actually not true. You vary the genes because how else would you know that you are pregnant? Because you are a complex organism, right? And which means that you have an immune system. And your immune system works this way, where it targets things that are not your, how should I say it? It targets things that are not your genes. Right? It targets things that are not your genes. Which means that in order for for you to know that for you to know that this is a different individual, it needs to vary the genes in order for your body to even know that it is with child, right? And to trigger all the instances of pregnancy, it needs to see that the genes are varied. There is another organism inside of you. That is what it has a way to do meiosis already. And when they tell you that, oh no, you vary the genes because you might, in order to inoculate yourselves against infectious organisms, etc., etc. Well, that is what you also have an immune system for. You have to understand that these males, the actual organism that they are, their origin organism, right? That one does not have an immune system because it is not an organism. It is not alive. It is not quote unquote alive because it is a virus. It doesn't do biological processes. Therefore, it is not alive. It doesn't engage in biological processes. Therefore, it is not alive. Right? So it doesn't have an immune system, which means it does rely on the very genes to survive. Hence the mutation, right? It relies on the varied genes to survive. It has to continue to mutate. It has to mutate at a rapid pace in order to survive. But we do not need that because we have an immune system that we invested time in. And that immune system goes by this. It catches an infectious organism. It records its DNA. It records its DNA. It records a significant part of its DNA, and then so that it can in the future catch that same one. Now, if we are able to do all of that with just one X chromosome, what do you think we will be able to do with two active X chromosomes? Do you think it's possible? Do you think it is possible that our immune system would be even better than what we have now? Which means that we don't actually have to worry about another organism, infectious organisms. Do you think that could be the same? Do you think that could be the same? Do you think that could be the same? Oh my God, what am I trying to say? Do you think that could be what it is? Oh my God. I feel like my brain is on fritz. Do you think that that's how it would actually be? Do you think that would be possible? Do you think that would be possible that our immune system would be on an even higher level with two X chromosomes? Yes, I think so. And if we look at X Turner syndrome females. Turner syndrome females. They also have diminished immunity. Ooh, what is that telling us? What is that telling us? That is telling us that I am correct. If you have one X and you have a diminished immunity, that means if you have half an X, if you have one X and half, right, which is the shadow X, right, and we have the immune system that we have now, that means with two full immune, excuse me, with two full X's, we actually would have a much better immune system. And that's exactly what is that's the same thing with the reproduction system. You can see the reproduction, getting better as the amount of X betters, right? Right here, we are hobbled because this X is hobbled. But what if this X is not hobbled? What if this X is not hobbled? Do you think that the baby making part will kind of just progress on its own, exactly like everything? Exactly like everything else? I think so. I think so. So let's go over it again. Let's go over it again, right? From the most diminished immune system to the least diminished. Excuse me, from the least diminished reproduction to the least, oh my God, I've lost my mind. From the most diminished reproduction to the least diminished reproduction. Look at where we are. Look at where we are. Now let's look at the ones that we actually know, because this one right here, this is still from your perspective, right? From your perspective, this is still speculation, right? This is still speculation because no one can prove this. We can actually prove this. I cannot prove this to you, even though I'm 1000% sure that I'm correct based on everything else that I have seen, right? Based on everything else that I have seen, I am 1000% sure that I am correct on what I am saying, right? But let's go by what we actually do know, right? So if we say, let's delete this part and we can just base it on this three, Look at this. Look at this. What this Y is doing is standing in for this X. See, like you have to understand that the organism that they are, the virus organism that I think that they originate from, right? It would not have a chromosome, which means the Y chromosome, they only got it as a stand-in for the X, because our system needs an X chromosome. And I actually reviewed why the chromosomes are needed. I actually reviewed what is going on with the chromosomes. I reviewed that. And the way our cells do their duplication and how to know when to end, right? Is based on the chromosome structure. Ours is based on the chromosomal structure, which means it needs it. It needs a chromosome. That's why this is even an X. That's why there's even a Y in the first place. And there's a paper that says, can you believe this? There is a paper that says that the Y chromosome, most of it is nonsense, does nothing whatsoever. Now, I need you to understand what is happening here. I need you to understand what is happening because this burns me so badly. Like you have to, you have to understand that biological processes require energy, which means that, right? And the human, they're happening on such a massive level, especially in the human organism. They're happening on such a massive level that accuracy is needed. That without accuracy, without energy efficiency, everything falls apart, right? So these processes in in complex organisms, right? They are happening at such a high level, at such a fast pace, at such a fast, consistent pace that accuracy is the only thing that makes them work. that accuracy is the only thing that makes them work. Because if you're going to get an organism, right? If you're going to get an organism that's going to be able to see, going to be able to hear, going to have the heart pump, right? The heart pump, the lungs do this, the muscle do this, right? You can't be bogged down with everything going wrong. So you have to invest in being accurate the first time. You understand that? Which means even the individual that we're seeing with all these disabilities, all these disabilities and all that stuff, right? That's not even normal. Those people are not normal. You're supposed to get the organism right the first time, or it's supposed to what? It's supposed to go by the wayside. It's supposed to what? Be discarded. It is supposed to be discarded if things are not going correct. These are the quality control system that will be in place at every stage of every process. Not just one control system, but multi-step control systems. Quality control system that will make sure that the organism that you're going to produce is going to be an organism that actually works, because it is doing so much that if it doesn't take that step, this organism would not even be viable. This organism would not even be viable to begin with, which means that the people that we're seeing with all these disabilities, right? These are the ones that the places, the reason they even exist is because the perfection, the part that causes them to live went perfectly. That is why they live. The part that causes them to live, when those parts went perfectly. That is what even caused them to live. But the reason that we are even experiencing all these imperfections is because of the things that these people did, what the males did to us. Right? So for you to have a whole Y chromosome, a whole chromosome that is just nonsense, with only like how many base pairs? Only 50 genes. Only 50 genes are actually doing something. That is unprecedented. That is so far out of what is normal. I am just in shock that no one has known this ever. I am just in shock that after they decoded the Y, right? After they decoded the Y, no one came out and said, hey, something is wrong here. Something is wrong here. Because the reason they did it, the reason it took them so long to do it was because it was so so repetitive. They couldn't keep track of it. It was just basic nonsense strung together to trick the X to thinking this is another X. That's what the Y is doing. That's what the Y chromosome is doing. Otherwise, the genes on it, they would simply be in a string. They would simply be in a string exactly like any virus. So I want to show you, look at this. This is what we know now. Look at the increasing reproductive ability. Reproductive viability. Look at the increasing reproductive viability here. Look at the increasing reproductive viability from just what we know. If we stacked up all the other ones, all the gender dysphoria individuals, if we stack them up based on their reproductive viability, you will see that it will follow this pattern. And always the ones with the XX will usually, and XX and no Y, or that the Y is disabled, they're going to follow this. They're going to follow this. They're going to, which means that when they don't have the Y, when they either don't have the Y or the Y is inactive, which means that something, they have a Y, but the genes didn't actually pop off like they were supposed to, right? The genes didn't actually pop off like they were supposed to. Let me explain that to you. The genes, right? Even though you have a Y chromosome, right? The genes are actually have to be used to produce to make your cells work. So the genes on it actually have to do something for you. It isn't just the chromosome that is doing something. The chromosome, the structurizing into the chromosome is just one way of control. It's a system of controlling the genome to understand, what is what. To understand what is what, right? Like just exactly like how we have the alphabet. Exactly like how we have the alphabet. In fact, I looked at the I'm learning Chinese, by the way, and I looked at the Chinese alphabet just yesterday, and I have no clue what that thing was doing. I had no clue what that thing was doing. And so I'm like, Jesus, how to be confused. How to be confused 101. or or how to propagate confusion 101. Right? So because there was no, if I didn't have that, if without that basis of what is the Chinese alphabet doing, right? What is it doing? What is the structure of it? How does it work? Right? It is like a codex. It is like a codex into the genes, right? Into the language, which is what the chromosomes are doing, right? So without the structure, everything gets mixed up. Everything gets mixed up, and you don't know what is what and which is which, right? That's what the chromosomes are doing. It is what organizing the genes into a way so that the system that's going to be reading them, right, knows which one is which, and they have to stay the same every time. This is part of why in the previous video, right, in the previous video actually, right, I said that they are the same. I said that the chromosomes, every chromosome in a pair, every chromosome in a pair, right? They are all the same. They are identical of each other. They're not identical, but their their shape and their sizes are identical, right? So, for instance, you might have the 1 versus the 15 chromosome, right? The 1 is going to be long, right? The 1 is going to be long, but the 15 chromosomes are going to be short, right? The reason they are in that order is so that the genome understands, which genes is where, right? Whew. Yeah. So I talk so much. so so that is why the X, actually that is why the Y has to pretend to be a Y chromosome, right? Because it is a control system. It is a control system, a quality control system, right? It is a quality control system to know which genes are which. One, so no, actually, it's doing two things, probably more than that. It's probably doing more than that, right? I know for sure that when you duplicate the genes, the entire genome, right? There is the chromosomes have a cap on them on both ends, right? On both ends. So each chromosome in a pair, right? Each chromosome, there are two chromosomes in a pair. Each chromosome would have an end cap, a beginning cap, a top cap, and an end cap of telomeres, right? And those telomeres, right? That means that there will be 4 telomeres in a pair of chromosomes. Chromosome pair 1 would have 4 telomeres, two end caps and 2 top caps, right? And those telomeres are telling it when to stop duplicating what, or to stop duplicating this chromosome, right? And then it moves on to the next one, and then it does all of that, right? So that's part of the things. And without that telomere from the virus, if a virus doesn't have the telomere, which they do not, right? The viruses do not have telomeres. Without the virus having the telomere, it doesn't even get duplicated at all, which means that it cannot infect us. It cannot get itself duplicated into us. It cannot do that. That is why it has a Y chromosome. And that is why its Y chromosome is all nonsense. But let's go back. Let's go back to this. Right? These are the ones. Look at how the reproductive viability continues to increase as you get to the X, as you get to the as you get to the as you get to the to the two X chromosomes, right? As you increase your number of chromosomes of sex chromosomes, right? And the reason we can't move forward is because we are kind of like the males. We are kind of like the males. We think we have an X, but what they did to us tells us that we don't actually have full access to the X. So we only have a shadow X. That is why we cannot move forward with our own reproduction. That is why we cannot move forward with our own reproduction. That's what it's doing. And you can see it from the XO. The XO, it has neither Y nor X. And it cannot reproduce. They're barren, they're sterile. They can't reproduce. Oh, goodness gracious. And they have a shorter lifespan. And the lifespan, so the immunity, the lifespan, the reproductive viability, they're all increasing as we go up, as we go towards this, right? So let's put back this. Do you think that if we can remove this and get to this stage, that we might actually be able to correct for all of these things? The immunology, right? The immunity grows up, the immunity goes up, the reproductive viability goes up, right? The lifespan go up. What do you think? Do you think that's possible? Do you think that is possible? Sexual reproduction is a freaking lie. It is a lie. That these males are human is a lie. And by the way, the reason XO can even happen at all, the reason XO can even happen at all is because in order, like I said, the complex organisms, right? It doesn't even have to be humans. Rats are running as complex as an organism that we are running, right? Rats are doing all the things that we're doing. So even for them, they have to be, their genes have to be performing on a high level of accuracy, on a next to a perfect level of accuracy in order to continue to produce rats at the rate that they're doing, right? So that means that it has a way in order for you to be able to produce at that level of accuracy, next to perfect, right? You have to have control after control. You're going to have a control to check if something is too big or if it's too small, if it's too many, if it's too little, if it's even there at all. You're gonna have a control for every single scenario of F up that could happen, right? So in order for that, and one of them would be right to check for two X's. To check for two X's. Because again, I told you this is human. The XX is human, which means you don't need to check to see if there's a Y. You don't need to check if there's a Y. You don't need to check if there's a this, if there's a that, if there's a not, right? You only need to make sure that your organism that you are in the process of producing has two X's. And then you're going to need to check for certain things on those X's for that to move on to the next stage of production. Yeah? Okay. So that means that in order for you to produce an organism that has only one X at all, you have to destroy, right? You have to destroy this system that checks for XX. This system that checks for XX as its pass. XX where the pass criteria is XX. You have to destroy that system, right? So that XO can also pass. So that XY, so that one X can pass, which means that X can also pass. So I don't think I explained that correctly. So this system, this quality control system, the way it checks, because it's organism that it knows it is, the organism it is trying to make, because that is it, that is the organism that it is. The only organism it would ever try to make is an XX organism, okay? Which means the quality control system that it would have would check to make sure that only XX passes. That means any organism, any egg cell. That means the egg cell is the organism right at this stage. The egg cell will be the organism at this stage. Okay? The egg cell that has an X, that has only one X, would not pass. That would either get an X made, or if it cannot do that, which I don't think it would actually do that, because that would be sending it back all the way back, or it will simply discard it. You understand why the X, the egg cell in your body, when you have your period, the egg cell itself is not coming out. It's not washing out with the uterine wall. The egg cell itself is getting reabsorbed, right? It's getting reabsorbed because the parts of it are still useful. It is made of component parts that are still useful. So it breaks down and then it gets reabsorbed into the body, right? So that's what would happen with any cell. Oh my goodness, with any egg cell that has only one X. It actually occurred to me. It actually occurs to me that that egg cell that we were just talking about, right? That also has only one XO. Because why? Something made it have its genes. So it would have only 23 chromosomes. Yeah, it would have only 23 chromosomes. I did not say 23 pairs of chromosomes, because remember, in normal, this is 46 chromosomes arranged in 23 pairs, right? 23 pairs. So that means it has 46, right? This just has 23 chromosomes. It doesn't have 23 pairs. It has a total of 23 chromosomes, which means it's also missing an X. Oh, Jesus. Jesus. I am good. I am freaking good. I am good. And it's making me crazy, right? That's why the egg cell, that is why you have a period. Because when it has itself, if when you go to have a child and it doesn't it doesn't have full genes, right? It doesn't have the full genes. When you go to have a YO child, which is an egg cell with YO, it doesn't even happen. It doesn't occur. There is no individual with YO, because again, the X is the human, which means without the X, there is no human that can be produced. There is no human that can be produced. Where is the blueprint that you're going to get? For the X is what has the blueprint for your organism. The X is what has the blueprint for your organism, right? So without the X, there is not even the instructions for the other genes to say, hey, what are we making today? Are we making one eyes or two eyes? Are we making five eyes or 10 ears? They don't even have the instruction to do that. So they cannot even move forward. But it's also the life force. You get it? It is the X is the life force. So a YO individual doesn't exist because the X is the life force, but the X, when you separate it from the Y, always makes a female. When you separate this X from the Y, it becomes this here, which is always a female. Do you see that? This is how I know males are not human. When you separate the X from the Y, it always makes only females. And it doesn't matter which X. It doesn't matter if it's your paternal X or your maternal X, whatever, right? When you separate the X from the Y, it only has the female format. There is no Y. There is no male format in the X. The human essence is only female. The human essence is only female. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. I had to run to the restroom. So the same thing is happening in this egg. The same thing is happening in this egg that is happening here. Because it halved itself, yeah? It halved itself, lost half its genes. That's why it dies at all. That's why it dies at all. Now, if it doesn't have itself, what do you think happened? Implant. It would implant. Like they want you to believe. They want you to believe that, oh no, it is impossible. It is impossible for you to have a child without a male. But let's say the egg doesn't have itself like it was designed to. By the way, the thing that makes it have itself, it's a different mechanism from the inactivation here. It is different from whatever is here. It is different from whatever this mechanism here is. Do you understand, right? I told you there are many things that they did to cause this, but this is the most of it. This is the beginning of it. This is the beginning of it, the bulk of it. This is the main thing that they did to cause it to happen, right? Without this, and it is why this one, right? It is why this one cannot move forward. This is why this one is barren. By the mere lack. That's what is different from these two. The mere lack of a second X makes you unable to reproduce. That is what is different from these two. Otherwise, if the second X is not what is required for reproducing, they would not be married. So by hobbling the second X, they made us unable to proceed with auto parthenogenesis, right? But because by not hobbling it, let's say that this didn't happen, right? If they didn't hobble it, if you have two good working genes, do you think the way your heart works, the way your lungs work, your eyes, your hair, your muscles, your nervous system, your immune system, right? How you get a bacteria and your immune system attacks it immediately, yeah, and your lymph nodes swell up because it is working. Your lymph nodes actually swell up when they are working. Do you understand that? When they, well, not when they are working, because they're constantly working. It is when they are on hyper work. When they are on hyper work, which means that you're actually you are dealing with some organism that has invaded you. That's when your lymph nodes are swollen. Yeah. So when all those things are automatic, there is not one of them that you have to go and control and say, hey, you have a key and I just need you to, to turn on right now. They all work by themselves. Do you think if you actually have this X, do you think it is possible that your reproduction could do that as well? Yeah, I think so. Yes, I think so. Yes, yes, I absolutely think that. Uh-huh. So back to what they did to the egg. So this egg, it suicides itself when it's not supposed to suicide itself. And the reason it doesn't implant is because of that suicide. Because two, if you need two X's to move forward, right? To move forward, and this individual here, the XO, the Turner syndrome individual here, if this Turner syndrome individual syndrome female can have all the 46 chromosomes, excuse me, can have all the other chromosomes, all the other 44 chromosomes, but it's only missing one chromosome, right? And it can still create an organism. Yeah? Okay. And the only problem that it has is that it's missing that one X. And it can be so hobbled by not having that one X, right? Do you think having the X and then half, the entire half of your genome, do you think not having that would further hobble you? Yes. Yes. That's what's happening to the egg. Now, I need you to understand this, right? If you are a 46 chromosome organism, yeah, a 46 chromosome organism, and your cells are going to produce, let's see, another 46 chromosome organism. Do you think part of your step, part of the steps that you will need to do, you will need to engage in would include you halving your genes? Oh, I don't know. I don't know how to say that. I can't remember if it's F or V. Do you think that step would include you halving your genes? Do you think the step to make another 46 chromosome individual will include halving your genes? Do you think so? Let me show that to you in another scenario that would help you get it. Okay? Let's say you are a blood cells. Yeah, blood cells. They produce they are produced in the bone marrow, right? Okay. Blood cells are produced in the red blood cells are produced in the bone marrow. Okay. So now the cells in the bone marrow, they come from this one egg cell, which means all these cells had to differentiate. I actually just read today that 200 that there are 200 different cell types in our bodies, right? So all these cells generate from this one cell, the egg cell from the female, right? And they all have the ability to differentiate. Oh, excuse me. They all have the ability to differentiate. Yeah. Okay. And which means that the bone marrow cells, they chose the bone marrow differentiation. Yeah. So now tell me, if you're going to make more, but you have to understand that the way it happens, the way it's going to happen in the bone marrow is that the bone marrow it's going to produce some cells, right? Whatever cells that it was assigned to. So the embryo would or the zygote would duplicate, and then it would assign cells to do this, and then those cells would they will start duplicating, and then when there's even more of them, then they would divide the cells even more into more categories, and then they would divide even more, and then they would you know and then they would divide the cells even more into different categories, and then finally you would get the bone marrow cells, right? So which means that the way that the bone marrow would continue to upkeep itself would be to mature some, which means that they go from just being the bone marrow germ cells. They will go from being the bone marrow germ cells into the actual bone, into the actual blood cells, right? That is the mature from the bone marrow germ cells, right, is when they are not mature. That's when they're young. You can make them into anything. And then when they become the white blood cells, red blood cells, etc., that's when you cannot turn them into anything, right? So what the bone marrow would do is the bone marrow would save some cells, some germ cells, right? And it would mature some. That means it would always have germ cells that are already differentiated into bone marrow cells, to make more bone marrow cells. So before it uses when it needs new cells, it will simply duplicate the ones that it has, right? It will simply duplicate the ones that it has, right? The germ cells, it would duplicate those, right? And then it would do the same process again. It would do the same process again, right? Which, by the way, that's exactly how the sperm does it. That's how the sperm does it. So that's how it will do. So now let's look at the germ cells. Let's look at the production from the bone marrow germ cells into the mature white blood cells. If your process is to produce white blood cells from bone marrow cells, right? Do you think what you're going to do, part of your process to become a red blood cell or a white blood cell would be to revert back to the egg cell, to the pre-embryonic cells. That was the ovum, that was the egg cell. Do you think that would be part of your process? Let me repeat that. Do you think bone marrow germ cells, the bone marrow germ cells, right? Let me tell you let me write to you on the screen what I'm actually saying. Bone marrow germ cells are the ones that are going to be duplicated to make more white blood cells, more red blood cells, more platelets, etc., right? So if your process is to make from these red blood cells, do you think part of your process would be to revert back to the egg cell, the egg cell, undifferentiated part or undifferentiated life cycle of the egg? Or are you going to keep your differentiated bone marrow cells? You're going to keep the differentiation that you've already achieved, right? And then find a way to produce more white blood cells, more platelets, more red blood cells. Exactly. That is what they're telling us. The egg cell, by having itself, that's what they're saying it did. They're saying that the egg cell will revert back to, they're saying the bone marrow cell will revert back to the ovum. So the ovum is the one that makes every cell, right? The ovum is the one that makes every cell. But the bone marrow cells are, which means that the bone marrow cells are actually more mature than the ovum cells, right? The ovum egg cell, right? So what they're telling us is that based on the, based on the egg having itself, they're telling us that what the normal process the normal way that biology works is that in order for you to produce a 46 chromosome organism, right, you must first become a 23 chromosome egg cell. Like the amount of lies we have fallen for is so massive. I'm like, how did we miss this all of this time? And of course, I know how. It's because no one thought that there was any, because the disguise was so good. Excuse me. Yeah, that's what they're telling us. That's what they're telling us the egg is doing. Yeah, that's what they're telling us makes sense that the egg does. But of course, that doesn't make any sense because biology simply doesn't do dumb stuff like that. Biology doesn't do dumb stuff like that, which means it is a constant, it is something that they set up. It is something that they set up, which means in order to actually fix this, we're going to have to go and zoom in and zoom in on whatever gene control system is making this egg half itself, because it's not the same as this. It's not the same as this. It's a different system. Goodness, I think this has already gone too long, and I need to jump off. I need to jump off here. I really hope this is making sense. I really hope that this is making sense, because I understand that it is a high level of science here, because we have not this particular one. This one is not so high level. This one is not so high level, but the things that I see every day, the things that I see every day are an even much higher level science than this. This whole system is is just, yeah, it would never ever be set up this way. And I hope, and I actually, one of the plans that I made, that I one of the things I plan on doing is to review like an organ system, right? How, like one of the biological processes of an entire organ system, right? Because the reproductive system itself is an organ system, right? Which means it's got a lot of moving parts to it, right? So we're going to review a couple of organ systems so that you can see the BS they are not doing. All of this BS that's not happening in them. They're going to be clean. They're going to be straightforward. They're not going to have all this nonsense happenings in them. And then you see this is how biology works, because if you look at every organism works that way. So what is it? Where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? And we're going to review that. Not today, but hopefully later. So that you can know that this is the way biology works. And yeah, it's exactly how you think. Biology works the exact way how you think. You think in the way that is most efficient as well. But biology has the luxury of doing that at an even higher level. If you're not going to do stuff like this, biology certainly is not going to do stuff like this. So what the heck is this from, if not what I say? If not what I say it's from, which is just a system that they set up. This is exactly, you have to understand that this is exactly how you would do something if you're trying to hobble that thing. This is not how you would design it if you were trying to actually help it. This is not how you would do it, right? So it isn't. It's not even that. It's not even that because that it's something that they did to us, etc. It is that they are purposely hobbling us. The entire purpose of this is to hobble us. If they did something to us, right? If they did something to us, right? But it was to, like, enable them to do something else, right? But I mean, there's a way to do that without actually having to hurt us, right? But this is designed specifically to do that because it is necessary for them to hurt us in order to enable their parasitism of us. You understand that? It is necessary that they hurt us in order to enable their parasitism of us. That is why this is how you design something where you intentionally want to hurt someone else. This is like when you take a bait, like one of those baits, right? That when you put your limbs in it, it slams it shut so that you can't get out, right? Well, the purpose of it isn't just to trap you there, right? It's to also hurt you so that in case you do get out, you won't be able to get far. That's exactly what this is. That's exactly what this is doing. It is to intentionally hurt us so that we are going to need them. So that we are going to, first of all, not be able to get away from them, and two, then need them. Because, like I just showed you, this affects more than just our reproductive system, our reproduction. It affects more than just our reproduction. It also affects our immunity. It also affects our lifespan and other things. It affects other things. It affects three things. That's what this is doing. Yeah, I'm glad to sign up here.